Okay, good afternoon, everybody. It's 1:25. The inquiry is resumed. Mr. White, would you like to introduce your witness, please?
Thank you, Mum. I absolutely will. Can I introduce you? And can I, first of all, go to page 3, please, of your evidence? Microphone is making a bid for freedom. Can I introduce you? You are a freelance, well, you're firstly Sam Waite or Samantha Waite.
Yes.
And you are a freelance film and TV production manager, line producer and producer.
Yes.
You've worked in the film and television industry for over 24 years and have engaged in senior film and TV production for over 10 years.
Yes.
As a result of your professional work, you're now a member of the Directors Guild of America, the Production Guild of Great Britain, and also BAFTA, which we heard about from Mrs. Neville on Friday. You also received an Oscar nomination for your short film Wish 143 in 2011.
Yes.
Did you actually go to the ceremony?
I did, yes.
You did, and you gasped at the appropriate moment when the winner was announced.
Yes.
Yeah. Did you have then at 1.2, in terms of your professional, your academic qualifications, you've got an honours degree in English literature and history of art from the University of York. You then studied not too far from here at the National Film and Television School in Beaconsfield, where you did film producing, and then you went on to do film producing at the New York Film Academy.
Yes, and directing and editing.
And directing editor. You also have worked as a mentor for the National Film and Television School, Screen Skills, and for women in film and TV. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And in your professional career, let's just spend a moment and we'll go upwards so we get more recent later on. You started off working film and TV production, absolutely fabulous. And you were production coordinator in 2005. Obviously, that was a television program.
Yes.
Or series. Then you worked with Ricky Gervais and Stephen Merchant in Extras, where you were production coordinator. Man on Wire, Lark Rise to Candleford, Retreat. You then became, just for the inspector's benefit, let's just spend a moment, actually, let's just deal with, because these are the kind of names everyone looks at many occasions and reads them hundreds of times without really a clue what they actually mean. And let's just ask, a production coordinator was what?
Production coordinator runs the production office. They're the kind of the beating heart of the production. They deal with all the administration and they're the conduit to all the departments. The production manager, as you go up the chain, is their boss, and increasingly as you go up, you're more inclined to be involved in budgeting, scheduling, and you work to the producers.
And then a unit production manager, how would you distinguish that?
It's an American term, and it's sort of a line producer or unit production manager are often the same thing.
Okay, and what fundamentally, as a line producer or unit production manager, what's your fundamental?
The right-hand person to the producer. From that point on, the producer may very well be American, and you're their point person in the UK. You run the budget and the schedule, the operations, health and safety, select the studio, advice on rebates. You're their point person in the UK or whichever territory you are working for.
And then Kids in Love, we got EastEnders.
Mm-hmm.
So you worked as production manager there. Then The Man Who Knew Infinity, was that a film?
That was a film at Pinewood.
Yep. At Pinewood.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and London Has Fallen, I've seen. That's again a film, isn't it?
At Pinewood.
Yeah, and BFG with the great man, Steven Spielberg. Yes. And that was filmed in where?
We filmed all around London, and this was an example of when there were sort of shortages. We used an office block in central London, and when there was shortage of office space.
And then a United Kingdom, Goodbye Christopher Robin, Phantom Thread, The Gentleman, a Guy Ritchie production, The Batman, 2019-20. Then obviously Guy Ritchie enjoyed working with you and you went back as line producer on The Covenant, is that correct?
That's correct, yes. Filmed in Spain.
and then Knuckles finally, where you were producer from 22 to 23.
Correct, yes.
And just give us an update at the present time. What's in the pipeline? That seems to be the buzzword. What are you potentially doing in 25?
Well, it's been really busy since the start of the year. I've been approached by 6 productions since December. I've turned down 2 because they weren't right for me to do. So I'm currently budgeting and scheduling 4 productions. One of those productions is very similar to The Covenant, as in it's a mid-budget independent. So it's above 30 million. And it's interesting for this inquiry because it's a good example of a production that's looking at all the competitive territories and which are the best tax incentives and the overall offer around the world. This particular production is looking at Atlanta, it's looking at the UK, and it's looking at Australia. It's got a very significantly well-known A-list Hollywood actor and a well-known director, and I'm studying which is the best territory to take the production to. So far, my studies have concluded that UK would be about, well, several $1 million cheaper to do the exact same production in the UK versus Atlanta.
Thank you. So overall, you say, I mean, just give us a sense, because how you mentioned the 6 productions you've been approached. I mean, are you self-employed in essence?
I'm self-employed. I have an agent.
Yeah.
I'm approached directly, and my agent approaches me. My agent is in Hollywood, and he approaches me directly.
Good. And at 1.4, so you characterize those as a wide variety of productions, low budget independent feature films, short films to big budget. Again, just looking at a kind of Venn diagram, you mentioned the film, the 30 million. I think you identified it. Did you say mid-budget?
Mid-budget, yes. So it's not a blockbuster, but it counts as a major motion picture above 30 million pounds.
So in the kind of, in the scale, I imagine you have the independent film, independent films such as your short film, Wish 143, obviously you did relatively early on.
Yeah.
Then you go up to independent films of slightly greater budget.
Yes.
Then you have, is the next stage mid-budget and then blockbuster, or is there other things in between?
I'd say that's fair. I think it's no 2 productions in my experience are the same, but yes, I think that's a fair sort of broad assessment of the structure.
Thank you. And basically, can I just say, I mean, well, I suppose I should ask you, why are you here to give evidence? Who asked you to give evidence, please?
I was asked by the developers of Marlow Film Studio, I'm a resident of Buckinghamshire, and having spoken to the backers and having seen extensively the plans, I've been very, very impressed. I think it's a best-in-class proposal. I mean, I don't think anyone in this inquiry is challenging the quality of this development, but that's why I got involved, because it struck such a chord as being an exceptional development for the region particularly.
Well, we'll come back to that a bit later. Can we now go outside the specifics of this inquiry and just spend a moment? And Ma'am, frankly, I'll be slightly led by you. I know you obviously had on Monday, you and Mr. Kershaw, Mr. Laycock, Mr. Fannin had a very good view at Shinfield and Pinewood. But will you interrupt if we're taking it too much detail? But obviously the main purpose is to assist you. Let's start off. We obviously heard Mr. Pryor's evidence. Did you listen to Mr. Pryor give his evidence?
Yes.
Which seems in another lifetime ago. Day 1, we're now on day 10. Soundstage, fundamentally. Can you just describe from your position what the function and purpose of a soundstage is, please?
The function is the controllability. It's the opportunity to build whatever it might be, whether it's an apartment or a created world, but it's as the name suggests, they have acoustic walls, they have full span soundproof doors, they obviously create privacy for the IP of the production, and they enable you to construct and build your production. You would take on most likely multiple sound stages on a production partly because of space, but also because of rotation of the filming schedule. So you might have 5 sets on three or four different sound stages, but you can't work whilst you're painting and constructing a set. So you would film on one set and you'd wrap the day and go to the next stage, the next day to the next set. So it's very important that you have adequate amounts of sound stage, that they are well designed, well built, and that they have, you know, the appropriate electrics, gantries. The height to the gantry is very important. Any sound stages that are poorly built can be worked around, but the cost in additional machinery, additional labour, it adds up. So the well-built soundstage is the most efficient and the most popular for crew. It makes everyone's lives a lot easier.
And do from a technical point of view, do sound stages differ qualitatively? Do you arrive and have a look? Does your trained eye think this is a good place to work and this is a less good place to work, or generally now all sound stages of the same specification and quality?
I would say to some degree the latter. I think in the industry, I mean, within this inquiry, there's been much talk, and Mr. Davis has talked about the grade A and the grade B, and I think that's been really helpful for me, because I think that's a good understanding of the different spaces that are available. I have worked at the best in the world, you know, the Warner Brothers and the Pinewoods, and I've also worked in the sheds. And I think the industry understands the difference, and the demand for the grade A is high. It has dropped during the strikes. There's no denying that, but the demand is bouncing back already. I'll come on to this more if you would like me to, but already my last 2 weeks calling around the stages in the West London cluster and in the metro zone have proven that they are oversubscribed already. That's not to say that they're contracted, that's not to say that they're booked, but they either have a major lease, which is going to mean that that IP is going to have the first choice of taking that space, or they have pencils. I don't know if you've heard of this system, but the pencil system is first, second, third pencil, and I'm currently on 6th pencil for one of the studios that we're talking about. So 5 other productions ahead of me could go in with the money and would secure that space, and I wouldn't be able to take that space, which is not reliable for me when I'm promising an international investor that they should come to London. So this production may well go to Australia because I can't secure stage space.
Right. Well, let me ask you that. Well, actually, no, we'll come back to that in a moment. And also one of the things that someone might say in 2.3, and we'll look at this in the process in a minute, but you say staffing requirements for a major film or TV production may involve some 150 to 300 personnel. Why, frankly, why are those numbers required?
There's degrees of scale. I would say that 150 is a low budget film, or it might be a bigger budget film, but it's relatively, you know, a two-hander. So that's 2 people in a room talking to one another. There isn't an awful lot of stunts or special effects or particular VFX. When you get to a production that's a sort of a blockbuster, then you can be into larger numbers. Very often that's crowd. Very often that's vendors that are in for the day. Perhaps you might have hired a specific crane that comes with crane techs and head techs. And so the daily call sheet, which I've submitted as part of my evidence, gives an example of what each day looks like. And again, no 2 days are the same. But so it can vary. But I'd say that 150 is probably the baseline of crew turning up at unit call and wrapping on wrap.
And when you say crane, are you talking about
a camera crane?
Exactly.
So yeah,
I was about to say a camera crane as a
or a lighting
something
crane.
you see on the skyline of London.
Yes.
Or Wickham. And then can I just then let's just then talk also about external spaces, the backlot. And I know from what Mr. Laycock's told me that that the inspector saw a backlot, 2 backlots on Monday, so she has a degree of familiarity. 3 backlots, okay. 3 backlots then. And can you just summarise what the backlot is used for in the production of a film, please?
It's an important component of a film. Not every film requires backlot build, but if you do, they're quite in short supply. The importance of the backlot is that it's an exterior space within the studio environment where your IP is protected, where you have security, but critically it saves time. So going to the example I've already referenced of the production looking at Atlanta and here, it's been decided with the director that the apartment and the exterior and the street scene, the best thing to do would be to build the apartment on a soundstage and the street scene on the backlot. And that will pretty much be the majority of the film. There'll be some locations off the studio lot that will be perhaps in London or within a 30-mile radius of the studio. But the backlot will be key. And the reason it will be key is because it's controlled. We can build, or they can build exactly what they need for their vision. It will be a small town in America is what they'll want to create. Then they will be able to do so without any worries about road closures and the public and continuity. You're just in control when you have your backlot. Furthermore, I just want to say about the backlot, you're generally speaking, working on the backlot you're not doing so for weeks and weeks and weeks. So for example, my last 2-3 films, I've needed backlot space for 2 or 3 days within the environment. The construction with the process of that production, the construction can take longer than that, and the strike can take longer than that. That's to say, taking down of the set. But the actual filming on the backlot, it's a relatively small proportion of the lifespan of a year in the studio.
So can I? There is actually a third, which is, as you say, on location.
Yes.
I mean, the inspector might have seen, might not, but at Shepperton, there is a very exotic recreation of Bath in the backlot. I don't know if you've seen it. It's Bridgerton inspired. But when you're putting a film together, what determines whether you rely on a backlot or whether you go out actually in situ and try and film on Oxford Street?
There's lots of factors. Cities are very hard to control in terms of, you do need to take them over for an amount of time. You have to have a long lead time for planning permission, to get permission to take over a town centre or a city centre. London's particularly tricky. Understandably, there's a lot's going on there. It's expensive. To film, you have a location, and I know we've talked about the unit base. I know Mr. Pryor mentioned the unit base. The unit base will also exist on location, but it will be created by the location team. And at the moment, unit bases in London are more expensive than the locations, again, because they're so in demand and hard to get. So the backlot, there's cost to construction, of course, but the backlot provides one place to shoot everything. The backlot can't give you everything, so very often you'd still need to go to St Paul's or wherever as a location. Ultimately, if filmmakers are coming to London, they want to see real London or the city, Manchester, wherever, the stately homes. So it's part of the process. And I tend to work in the space where it's part studio and part location. It's quite a popular model.
Thank you. Right, let's then go on to what you deal with in your section 3 of your proof. And I just want, before we look at the actual process, can we talk about geography for a moment? Obviously, you've been involved in films both in the UK and abroad, and as you say, you've also worked on productions that have emanated from the States and the UK. And I just want to ask you about, can you do a kind of state of the nation view of the UK film industry currently from your kind of coalface perspective, please?
There is a skills shortage, and I would like to comment on that in as much as the investment into the country in film production. The skills shortage is less of a concern, I would say, from my point of view. For an inward investor, the skills shortages seem to be a domestic problem that the people on the ground, such as myself, would have to handle. But those crew, when they have that collective power, which is great, of being able to choose where they want to work. And the reality is that the Southeast London, the West London cluster, it is, in my experience, the more popular place for crew to live. Whether it's which way round it is, I don't know. Mr. Davis has given us evidence of 100 years of the West London cluster developing. But I would call it the studio belt. And people tend to gravitate where they can go to work and come home every day. The film industry is, you know, you're freelance from 6 months to the next, you're working on a different job, and being able to get home at night is a huge factor. It's not always possible, but crew will always choose to take a job where they're going to have a comfortable drive or commute to work, public transport, shuttle buses. So yes, there are regional clusters. Absolutely, there are, and I think that that's great that they are. I'm not from this area. I moved to this area in order to be able to develop my career, because the reality of regional clusters is there are only a number of jobs that go there. You have to make sure that you get them. Bristol, Manchester, Birmingham, Wales, they're rarer. Whereas in the southeast and in the West London cluster and around London, there's more work. There's more concentration of crew. And for someone coming over from America, an A-lister or producers or directors above the line talent, it's a much easier sell to be in the capital rather than away from, you know, in the north or in the west. It's a much easier sell for them culturally to be close to London.
Thank you. Then can we, a point I wanted to ask you about was in 3.8 and 3.9, and we'll come on to look at the mechanics of producing films and high-end television, but just tell us about the environment in a film studios. I mean, how does it actually operate when you're working, say, in a Pinewood or a Shepperton? How you've got, as you say, at 3.9, the daily call sheet requires hundreds of people. I mean, how does it work? How do you ensure that people are where they should be in the context of a studio?
It's an incredibly well-oiled machine. The film, a film production is an expensive business. There's a lot of money at stake, and time and delays are expensive. So it's a meticulously planned industry. I think that, you know, delays even by half an hour, if a crew member can't get into the studio site because there's queues at the security gate, it means you can't film. And it's a very a studio has to be well oiled, as does a location. A location team would have to make sure that access to the set, it's always about getting to the set, getting to the camera. So these studios are really, all of them are really well, the grade A and the well functioning popular studios have considered this, and they understand how important it is to run smoothly.
Thank you. Okay, let's then look at the roadmap. And actually, I think that you say this process starts with the commission of a script.
Yes.
But not necessarily does it, because the commission of the script, I mean, many scripts are written by people who aspire to be screenwriters, and they basically send their scripts to producers hoping they'll be interested. So there is the side
that is true. Yes.
Formal commission, and there's also the gold dust script that comes through, and the producer, having fallen asleep with 20 scripts, actually wakes up and thinks this one actually is of interest. Is that right or not?
Yes, that's true. The acquisition of screenplays is multifaceted. There's a lot of film markets to find content. The drive for content and the drive for new stories is always there, which is why it's such a dynamic and exciting industry, really. But yes, there are multiple ways that a screenplay will be acquired.
So so what we have is a producer shows an interest in a script.
Yes.
And the next stage, obviously, is to think about whether it is something that funding. I mean, obviously, funding's required, and we see that then the next process, obviously, is to establish the key components of actually making it, which include the director and the key cast, as you set out in pre-12.
Yes.
And is there a relationship between the director? I mean, for example, I can't imagine how easy, from recollection or your knowledge, was it to get funding for the BFG because of the name of the director as being.
I think it was fairly easy.
Exactly. And also, again, with the key cast, if you've lined up what you call A-listers, does that help or harm funding?
The talent attached to a script, being the director, the actors, the confidence of the producers that they have in the market, all align to raise the finance.
And then you have both been producer and line producer.
Yeah.
Do you then get phoned up by the producer who basically does a pitch to you and says, I've got
Yes.
director X, I've got actors Y and Z. Are you interested? Can you come on board?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then once you've committed, you're then effectively the green light to start, as you say, hiring the crew. I'm just tell the inspector the mechanics. I mean, you probably know what, 100, 200 camera people.
Yes.
And so when you've got like one of these that you're currently evolving, who do you phone? And I mean, how do you decide when?
The director will guide much of these hires. So the DOP will be often the choice of the director.
Sorry, the DAP.
The DOP, the Director of Photography,
Yeah,
I beg your pardon. There will usually be a relationship existing with the Director of Photography or the cinematographer.
And just tell us that. Do directors, in your experience, do they generally have a key? Do they have their key crew in mind, or are they happy to take your suggestions, or does it just completely depend?
It really varies. Often I'm called upon to select designers, particularly if the director is not from the UK and they want to hire a UK designer. The reason the UK is doing so well in this market is because we have the perfect, and I don't think this is ever in question in this inquiry, but we have the perfect situation in that we have the tax credit, we have the infrastructure, and we have the above and below the line talent. So we have the actors, we have the directors, and we have the support crew. That means that we don't have to fly people in from around the world. So a director may not have worked with a local cinematographer, but there are ample, excellent, stellar cinematographers in this country who would be the first choice.
But are you, as a line producer, are you the one who actually phones? Do you phone?
Yes. I mean, yeah, if I would be the one calling the agents, it all goes from me to an agent, the various agencies, and there are an awful lot of talent agencies here, including UTA, who represent me. They've set up an office in London. They recognise how much talent above and below the line is in the UK. So they've set up an office in London as well as Los Angeles.
So when you talk about talent, you mean crew as well as?
Unfortunately, we're non-talent.
No, you're non-talent.
Yeah,
right, okay.
Talent is the term for.
Sorry, I thought we were talking about crew. So
sorry,
it's okay.
Talent is above the line. Talent is your actor, your director, and then below the line is the crew.
Right.
And do you, in putting that crew together, do you not the agents seek to kind of give you a job lot in a sense?
They will, they're very respectful. They'll give a short list of people who they recommend. They'll look at the director's work and they will say, well, we think this design is going to be appropriate and have a good fit. And it's about relationships. This industry is hugely about relationships. So the agents will have a look at who they think are available and a good fit for the production.
And also, as you say, sorry.
Are you still talking about talent here, not crew?
I'm talking about crew.
You talked about crew now,
Yes,
right? Okay,
yes,
that's all right.
I'm sorry.
And in terms of crew, presumably Steven Spielberg's first cameraman is presumably more expensive, is he or her, than another cameraman? I mean, you say line producers keep track of the budget. I mean, your director or your producer is not going to thank you if you say I've got the best crew on the world, but it's costing twice what the budget is.
You kind of have a when you have a budget, you would say sort of like a pick and mix. You say, look, you're asking for 10 things and we can only probably afford 7 of them. Which of them are most important to you? And the director will say, well, I can't make this film without my director of photography. I can't make this film without my editor. They'll have certain elements that are vital. Perhaps that there's a certain actor that is attached to the sales, to the finance, and is integral. So then you have to look at what is left after that pot has been allocated.
But do you not also have practicalities like a cameraman says I'm effectively free till the end of June 25, and you've got to debate whether that's a deadline you can hit or not?
I would say, again, for below the line, you might not wait for below the line. You might say we can make this film below the line and above the line. Above the line are, I talk about it a little bit in my report, but above the line is the essential elements that the film or TV show has to have in order to hit the financier's remit. So a certain actor, a certain director. The below the line crew, no one really minds other than maybe the director. So, you know, they don't change. If you had a different me, for example, it wouldn't change the shape of the production on the screen in that sense.
You're being too modest. The financiers would throw their hands up in horror if they lost you. Now, let's choose the territory. What then happens? So you've now you're beginning to get the mechanics in place. You've got your crew. Have you got a start date by that stage, or a rough idea when you're going to start shooting?
Again, availability will lead. So using my example again of this comedy that I'm trying to get to the UK, we've got a window of availability for the director. They may have they're going out to actors at the moment. They may decide to wait for an actor, but by and large, it's packaged for a specific date. From then you go into your prep phase and you will budget, let's say 12 weeks of prep, and you count down from then to your principal photography date in June or July.
Now let's move on to choosing where you're going to film it. And just talk us through that process, please. What are the...
In terms of the territory?
Yeah, in terms of the territory.
The financier will look at the territories that are going to offer. It's not just financial. It's everything. It's the complete package. The tax credit, but also the reliability of the tax credit. The UK, I believe, is popular because there's a commonality of language, not just English speaking, but I think we and LA and Hollywood speak the same language in terms of how we budget and schedule, and so there's a commonality there that's popular. But there is absolutely a competitive market. There are other territories absolutely looking at the UK and wanting a slice of that, as all other witnesses have attested. So what we have to do in the UK is not be complacent. We have to recognise that those other territories are looking to take this market share. But in analysing the territory, as I say, it will be the crew, the above the line talent, the tax rebate, the infrastructure, very important, and an actor may say, I don't want to shoot in, no offence to Hungary, but I don't want to shoot in Hungary, but I'm happy to go to London. That happens quite a lot.
And generally, in your experience, if you go back having assisted the producer in finding a territory and it be the UK, what's your experience of the response of you say UK is our likely destination to film this?
UK is a favourite amongst around the world, because I think some actors and artists have second homes here. It's a well-oiled route to come and work here. It's not a particularly hard sell. The thing to say about the UK is that we have a very our workforce are well paid. However, our unions and our fringes are nowhere near as high as other territories, particularly America and France, where those costs can really be.
What do you mean by fringes?
So you have your basic pay, and then you have a union fringe on top of that, and then your federal fringe. National insurance, effectively.
Okay, yeah.
So our national insurance is not prohibitive. So our crew get paid well.
Don't tell Rachel Reeves that.
Sorry, but it's why we are doing so well, because we have the talent, as in the crew, but we're not as expensive, but we are still paid well as a freelance sector.
Thank you. Then we go on the schedule, and you say industry software. And is there an ability to, I mean, well, let's put it, you've got a script. I don't know, Mum, have you ever seen a script?
Yeah.
Okay. So you've got a script, and it obviously is broken down into segments, which are scenes, effectively. Is that right or wrong?
That's right. It's written in final draft typically, and it will be, sets. It's numbered. It's broken down then into a schedule. So and it's quite a laborious process. You'll take your script, manually enter it into Movie Magic, which is the scheduling software, and then Movie Magic Scheduling and Movie Magic Budgeting, same company, Entertainment Partners, who run that. That's how you create your schedule and your budget. So your script is your first point. Your script will dictate that the schedule, your director knows he only wants to shoot 2.5 pages a day. That means you need 50 days or whatever. Then you look at each element and say, right, well, we need all of these actors in this scene. We need all of these stunts in this scene, cars, snow, any element that's happening in that scene gets plugged into Movie Magic Scheduling, and then that churns out reports that then you feed into the budget. So you can say, I've got 20 days of this actor, I've got 30 days of snow effects, etc., etc.
And then I mean, again, just to make the point that what relationship does the sequential order of the script influence or determine the order of shooting?
It's a good question. Some directors like to shoot in story order. It's not always practical. You really have to coalesce a schedule so that you are shooting efficiently. So a film might start on a location, run for an hour and a half, and then end on a location. You may well have to shoot that location on the same day or over 2 days. So you're effectively shooting the beginning and the end of the film together. Not popular with actors, they don't like that for their performance. But the grouping together elements when you're scheduling is the only way to sensibly put together a schedule. So that the most important thing when we talk about studio and the location is minimizing the moves. So a unit move is when you've finished filming in one particular place and you pack up the tools and the trucks and you drive overnight, or you leave on wrap, say 7 p.m. The trucks leave, they go to location and they set up, and then they're on that location for 2 weeks, and then they move to another location. This is not a process that happens every day. I mean, it can be, but it costs a fortune if you're a unit moving every day. What you're trying to do is shoot as much as possible in one space to minimize those moves, because those moves cost thousands, and setup costs and crew.
And then in the budget, I mean, let's imagine you do the budget and let's say for argument's sake, it's £32 million. To what extent is that provided as a fait accompli to the producer? That's what the budget is, or is there attempts? Is it a movable feast in the sense that there's often pressure on you to reduce that budget?
Yes.
Yeah.
They'll have a number that they will want to either spend on the film or production, or that they've raised to make it. And I don't work in sales, but I it's to do with the understanding of the profitability. They're only going to want to spend X when they know that the profitability, the box office is going to make Y. So you'll be given a budget number, a bottom line to back into. And my job, people who do my job, we look at the script, we look at the ambition of the script. We say, well, you've got $32 million. Realistically, this would cost you $80 million. What do we want to do? And that's quite a common everyday problem.
Yeah, is that when you lose the A-lister, basically?
Oh no, the A-lister has to stay. So that's when you decide we'll only have one snow day.
Okay. And then we also noticed the application of the cultural test, which you set out there. I don't think we need to spend time on there. And then once the budget's in, hopefully you've qualified, you then get the green light to actually commence prep. Is that correct?
Correct, yes.
And that is a period, well, generally, in order to work out what you need to do to commence filming, you have a period of between 10 and 25 weeks.
Yes, again, no two productions are the same, but yeah, 10 would be a low budget prep period, and 25 to 30 would be a big blockbuster DC production.
And then, as you say, you need various kind of heads of the various roles: director of photography, designer, casting director, costume, makeup, and select a studio.
Yes.
Let's deal with that now.
Yes.
So you're now in a position. I mean, are you actively currently trying to find studios for the films you mentioned?
Yes.
And tell the inspector about the mechanics of that process, please.
The studios are around West London cluster and in the metro zone are all obviously vying for your business. However, many of them, as I know you've heard, have these master lease agreements, and it does mean that effectively those lease agreements will be very reluctant. They'll be very reluctant to give up that space to another production until they fully know what they're going to bring through their pipeline. So to be honest, it's become.
When do they know when that pipeline is?
They don't. So Netflix, for example, might not be able to tell me now, and this is actually true, whether they can give me the stage space I need for my current production. I'm looking for 100,000 square foot of stage space, supporting workshops. That includes the backlot. And at the moment, of the grade A studios we've identified in this inquiry, only one can give me some certainty, another can give me a sixth pencil, and both of those situations could have changed in the next month. So I am in a situation, and this is very common, and it did quieten down during the strikes, absolutely, but pre the strikes, the scramble, the space was horrible, and I think it's coming back. And when we talk about the pipeline and the collapse of the pipeline of the studios that we've talked about that are no longer viable for whatever reason, for me, that's a worry, because what I don't want to do is go back to the days where I'm having to take a production to a warehouse, a repurposed warehouse, where they're not soundproofed, they're not as safe, they're not well built, because those kind of spaces, the upfront cost and the hidden infrastructure are very different. It's very hard to know when you're going to a space that's not built for purpose what your final cost report will be, because so much has to be spent down the line to make it work. Whereas when you're taking a Pinewood or wherever, you know upfront that stage, that office, that workshop is going to cost me X a week, and you can plan accordingly. When you're budgeting and when you're making a film, costs change all the time. We cost report every single week with our team, and all you want to know is about situations up front. So any costs that come when you're too far down the line to do anything about it are the problem. So those spaces that are not built for purpose have a lot of hidden unknown costs and problems potentially.
And tell me, I mean, you talked about the current state. I mean, how important, I mean, what is the kind of the moment of no return in terms of a studio? I mean, will a film continue down the route to commencing sale on the 1st of May without a studio secured? Or
No, unless I can guarantee somewhere to build it. I mean, a director will fly to the UK to go on recce's, and they will have a look around the studio, they will look around the stages, they will look around the facilities, and they will look at locations, and you will not be greenlit until that process has been satisfied.
And how do you effectively confirm the deal and secure space on a studio?
It's the Wild West at the moment, and was prior to the strikes, and it really is. The studios work really hard to help. So there's no Pinewood, Leavesden, every single studio we've called in the last 2 weeks about the production have said we will do what we can. They want to help us, but the reality is there isn't enough space. The demand is high. There is a backlog from the strikes. The tax credit, the independent tax credit, is bringing in an abundance of the lower budget stock that's can't get in anywhere because the blockbusters are taking so much overflow space. And very often, again, with these master lease agreements, it's very common. I know of quite a few productions at the moment, I won't name them, where they are in a studio with a master lease agreement and they're part of that IP, and they're having to use overflow in other studios because they don't have enough space there. Right. So that leaves nowhere for the other productions to go.
But in terms of the actual mechanics, does the production sign a formal legal agreement? So with, let's say, Warner Brother Leavesden, you'd sign a formal kind of occupation agreement and you hire the space for a period.
You sign a lease, you agree a payment term, maybe it's 25% payment on signature and then a payment structure through the course of the production. Ultimately, if you're on a sixth pencil, you may be able to secure that space if you're willing to sign that lease earlier than the other 5. So that's why I call it the Wild West, because it's how quickly can producers and their finance move to secure the space.
Thank you. Now, I will go on. I think in the interest of time, I won't ask you too much more about set construction, production meetings, principal photography, post-production, etc., the actual mechanics, unless, Ma'am, there's anything there you particularly want to ask about the actual mechanics. Can we then move on? And I just want to ask you, yes, I think this is one of the less contentious issues at this inquiry, but I just want your view as an actual user of the space. Have you, in the time since being asked at this inquiry, I mean by the applicants / appellants to give evidence, have you had a chance to look at what is proposed at Marlow?
Yes.
And from your operational viewpoint and perspective, what do you say about the quality or lack of quality of what is proposed, please?
I mean, as I say, I've been aware of Marlow for a few years. It struck me that the design was exceptional. I think that sustainability, welfare, ecology, consideration to what it would be like for people to work at that site has been really well thought of. Its proximity to international airport, Heathrow, and the expansion, hopefully, Marlow town, the ability to be able to actually walk from the station, their proposals to improve transport. I just think it's really exciting. It's really exciting as a freelance film producer, but it's also really exciting for me as a Buckinghamshire resident, because I do see that you know, we live in an area of outstanding natural beauty, and the opportunities for the young people to enjoy green space, there are alternatives. The opportunities for young people in this region to get exciting, amazing jobs and be really inspired by their potential future, they're rare. And I think that we live very close to, for example, National Film and Television School, best in the country, third best in the world, right on our doorstep. I've spoken to them this week and they broadly endorse this proposal because they're expanding and they see this opportunity for their students. That there's a best-in-class film studio that has been endorsed by some of the most amazing names in the industry, and it's right there. And all these graduates, what we don't want to do is lose them from the region. I'm talking specifically about Buckinghamshire now. This is an opportunity to give those graduates a real chance to look forward to a career.
Well, let me ask you, have you worked at Pinewood?
Yes.
Have you worked at Shepperton?
Yes.
Have you worked at Warner Brothers?
Yes.
Have you worked at Shinfield?
No, I visited, but I've never worked there.
Have you worked at Elstree?
Yes.
Have you worked at, well, Dagenham Eastbrook? I think I know the answer.
No.
No. Have you, let me just ask you, in your experience of those studios and looking at the Marlow offer, what's your judgment about whether it is comparative or not to existing provision?
Certainly comparative. I think that it's an amazing proposal. I think the backers, I want to say about the backers, and this is why I've come so far down the line with Marlow, I'm really impressed by them. I think that they are passionate, they're committed, they are going to make this work if this gets the go ahead. I hope it does. I think the message that it would send out to the world about our investment in film and the creative arts, it would be huge. How it compares, I think it's a best-in-class studio. I'm not going to denigrate the other studios because they're my bread and butter, but I do see how Marlow, as part of an overall package in the Southeast, will only ever raise the standards. And I want to talk about the grade B, the stock of studios. They're very often used as an overflow for the grade A, and I don't think that's fair to them. I think it would be, we've talked, and I've seen a lot of evidence about kind of breaking up the film production and displacement. And for me, I think that the opportunity, what Marlow will present, is an opportunity for, yes, for the bigger budget productions to go there during the peak times. It will also be an opportunity for those smaller studios to host those smaller budget productions that are coming through and have nowhere to go at the moment. They're the ones that are having to go to adequate space. And I just think, why should our expectation of this industry be so low? I don't think we should strive for adequate. I think we should strive for the best. And I think that will improve the rest of the studios. Not that they need it, but what I'm saying is, I think that we're in such an amazing position in the UK in the film sector, and it is a very competitive market internationally. And I think we have such an opportunity to hold it here. The high street is dying, shops are struggling. This is a real opportunity for this region to create an amazing economy. And I think, sorry, I'm not answering your question, I'm getting on my soapbox, but I think it's going to be a best-in-class studio that's going to just raise the bar, and everyone else is it's just going to raise the level.
Thank you. Let's now just move on to your section 5, site management.
Yes.
Now let's just have first of all, let me ask you globally in your experience, not about Marlow, but about generally, to what extent, once you're within a studio space, the inspector will have seen the security, indeed NDA, signing the forms, etc., monitoring where you're going. I mean, to what extent, once you're internally within a studio, is it managed internally by the operator?
Absolutely. So I think that it's really important to say that every studio I've ever worked in, and you've listed some of them, but not all, the relationship of the studio to their residents, to their neighbours, is really important. It's imperative that the neighbours are respected, because ultimately we productions come and go, but their space within that community is for life. So when we move into those spaces, we sign a lease, and we will be given a manual on how to work within that environment, and it will be strict. And productions failure to stick within that guideline, we would be in breach of contract. You don't do it. You do not do it. So I think that it's an incredibly tightly run, well-run structure. Every studio that you go to around the world, you'll meet the operations team, and their job is to make sure that every production and every tenant on the lot is adhering to their way of working, which is of a very high standard. Health and safety, respect. These are really, really key words in the film community.
Thank you. And can I just ask, in relation to, yes, there was obviously concerns. I don't think I'll deal with them because we dealt with them in the roundtable about noise and lighting in chief, because you've dealt with them. And I just wanted to ask you this, yes, about, let's just go on the mechanics. On a film set, I mean, who's controlling the operations, for example, things that are going on the backlot? Is there a point of contact with the studio?
Yes, and most productions now hire a unit manager, or a studio unit manager, as they're called. They're appointed by the production, but their job is to interface between the studio and the production to make sure that we are doing what we should be doing, and that we're not going to be in breach of contract. Communication is our biggest tool, and we work very hard to rub alongside the other productions that are there, but also to make sure that we are sticking to the guidelines of that studio, which will be very strict and very robust.
Now, I wanted to just ask you 2 additional points that have come up, and I just wondered if you have any evidence on this. The 2 points, first of all, is in relation to capacity. On the basis of your recent experiences, I mean, I don't want the exact figure, but what is your perception of where the grade A film studios currently sit in terms of capacity? Is there oodles? Is it about okay?
There's been a shortage for a long time, and I think that I want to talk a little bit about the cycle of the production, because if you go around a studio now in February, it would look like they're quiet, because majority of line producers around the world are planning for the summer. The cycle is typically from Thanksgiving to February, March. Unless you're actively on a production, chances are you're going to be waiting for the production to sort of gear up again in the spring. And then from spring through to Thanksgiving, you're going to be busy. That was the cycle before the high-end TV tax rebate in 2015. At that point, we've seen about the explosion of the streamers, and at that point there was no cycle at all to film production. It was all year round, not enough space, not enough crew. I'm seeing now in February a sort of a return to the 2015 cycle, where it's quiet, but you know it's going to be by May, there will be no crew and there will be no stage space. You can see that. I have been offered, as I say, in the grade A studios, even in spite of all the efforts to get us in, the fact is I've only got 2 options and they're both subject to high competition from other productions. It's highly unlikely I will be able to secure them. So then I'm faced with telling a producer overseas, we can make it work, don't go to Atlanta, please come to the UK, but I will be looking at setting up my own space for that build.
And
Disuse work, I mean, there's a lot of location libraries who have workspaces, workshops, warehouses that are available and on the market, because these agencies have recognised the shortage of studio stock, and they will have a they'll have a database of spaces that I can go to and set up a studio temporarily. It's very inefficient because I'll spend a lot of money on their behalf, the producers, making that studio space work, only to take it back down again when we've finished. But if it's that or lose this film to the UK, it's what we'll have to do.
thank you. And again, if you just go to, can you go to your 6.5, please?
Yes.
And you quote there towards 6 lines from the bottom about the evidence we've heard, and there's been questions from the other 2 parties about the blockbusters that have been lost. And I just want, in the light of what you know about this situation in 2025, what's your view on the likelihood of films being lost to the UK for the reasons you've identified? Is there a likelihood, or is the fear completely
No, I think it's really possible, as we've heard from a lot of the evidence. There's fierce competition for our business globally, and I think that the lack of space is returning to be, not to contradict the experts in the industry, this is my opinion from where I sit, I think the lack of space will be the biggest threat for us over 2025 and beyond. I think that the skills shortage can be managed. I think that we've got a lot of fantastic colleges, universities in this country and in this region pledging to students that they can come and do a film course, and we have an obligation to ensure that they'll have a job when they graduate. I think the skills shortage is going to be resolved in a way that I don't think we can sit on our laurels and look at the pipeline and say, oh, well, that's it, we don't have a problem, because that pipeline is of no use to me. I need a studio that I can walk into. And so to see that pipeline collapse potentially because of the studios over the course of this inquiry that have gone down, it's really worrying. And I feel like we're going to go back to the old days of insufficient sites.
Okay, and the final thing I want to ask you about is about unemployment in the sector, and there's been various evidence on it. Just in February 25, what is your perception of the level of unemployment or not amongst the?
I find it interesting because the studies about employment in the sector, most of us are not employed, most of us are freelance, and it's a very Mr. Chodorowicz has given a study of the sort of typical average wage, and I think our average wage in this sector is above average. A student can leave sixth form and get a job as a production runner and be on nearly 40,000 a year if they're working, 30, 40 weeks a year, which they do. So the opportunities are huge. And I think that, yes, if you did a straw poll of electricians and carpenters working right now, it would not be 100% capacity. If you ask me in May how many electricians and carpenters are available, we will have a shortage. But we're a really egalitarian sector. And that's why I'm so passionate about it, because I think that Marlow is making real the commitment to the Culture and Skills Academy, particularly for the region, weighted to disadvantaged backgrounds. This is where we really struggle, is to tapping into people, tapping into the skills and the market. For example, one of the biggest problems in our industry is accountants. It's a really, really big problem. And there must be, and I spoke to John Wardle at National Film Television School, and they recognise this, and they are seeing that actually bringing in mid-level careers and giving training and opportunities, this is a real possibility for us here in this sector. But we need to tap into it. And again, I think that Marlow will, for Buckinghamshire, really be an opportunity. I've seen studies, and I see it myself in the studios. The operations team at the studios are small, so on paper the job opportunities don't seem to be that great. But the reality is, Pinewood alone has 150 tenants on the lot, so that's 150 businesses that have set up in this space, and this opportunity is there for Marlow and for Buckinghamshire to create jobs and to create an economy. And yeah,
Thank you.
hopefully that answered the question.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mum. That's my examination in chief. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You've estimated about 45 minutes. Do you want
Probably a bit under.
a bit under? We'll go straight on to you, and then we'll take
Okay.
an adjournment afterwards to
Thank you,
spot
ma'am.
the. Anything you want me to have up now?
No, I think not. We'll pick up as we go through to the extent we need documents. And sorry, I didn't catch whether it was Miss or Ms.
Ms.
Good afternoon. First question: have you seen a business plan prepared by Dido Property for the Marlow Film Studio?
I have not.
No. So you don't. Do you know at this point of time what the rate card would show in terms of the cost of use?
No. However, I would like to caveat that because it doesn't at the moment have or have planned to have an MLA taking predominantly over the space, I would anticipate that it is a more negotiable rate card than the studios with an MLA. Those studios are, again, I have a great relationship with particularly Pinewood, but they are very, very restricted as to how they can negotiate their rate card subject to those MLAs.
Yes. And of course, the important caveat there was this is on the assumption that Marlow does not subject itself to an MLA with any producers.
Absolutely,
Yes.
yes.
So there's no means through this process by which that can be secured, is there?
No, but the fact that that MLA will bring in jobs and keep the studio busy, it either is win-win, you know.
But you don't have any evidence, do you, that Marlow would support or be able to provide stage space for low budget productions, for example?
I don't, and I'm not actually necessarily saying that they would. What I'm saying that they would do is that they would create, they would free up the smaller studios to house those productions that have nowhere to go at the moment. That's the problem. That's the shortage.
We'll come back to the stage space in a moment.
Okay.
You can confirm, can't you, that there is an existing serious cruise shortage?
Yes, as I've said, I think it's manageable. I think it's a domestic problem. I don't know if I'd say it's serious. I think that we have the mechanism to resolve it. We have an awful lot of colleges and universities looking at this, and we have an awful lot of apprenticeships.
Yes.
So I think this is a very well recognised issue, and it's manageable.
Well,
This is
it's
my
very
experience.
Paragraph 417 of your proof on page 18, where you
Yes.
say it's a serious problem.
Okay, I'm sorry.
It is a serious issue, and indeed, in your evidence in chief a few moments ago, you said in terms of by May, there would be unlikely to be any crew available.
There'll be a shortage of crew, yes.
Yes.
There won't be the vast levels of unemployment that we've talked about at this inquiry. That's true.
Yes.
Yes.
So there would be a constraint irrespective of stage space by reason of crew availability.
Yes, but I don't think that's a reason why we shouldn't develop and grow this economy, because we know that there's a general job shortage in this country and that this is an egalitarian sector. So I think in the short term, we have an issue that is manageable. It's serious, as I've explained. Accountants is a really big problem. One thing I've talked about previously is that we do have the opportunity to bring crew in from other countries. This is something that's really important about our tax credit. And like a lot of territories, the tax rebate does not allow you to bring in below the line crew. You have to have a very specific reason for bringing crew into another territory. In the UK, if you can evidence a shortage, then you can bring in crew from Canada, from America. We've got a very good system of getting work permits where there's a proven shortage. So the system has managed. It's not great for our economy, but in terms of servicing those productions, it can be done.
It would rely on imported labour.
Absolutely, and we
Right.
don't want to do that, which is why we
Good.
want to address our labour shortage in the
Then in
sector.
terms of the 6 productions which you are presently involved with, which of
Yes.
those are green lit?
Oh, none of them are green
No.
lit. No,
No.
no. If we want to talk about green lit
I
productions,
just
okay,
answer the question.
no, okay.
None of them are green lit. In terms of the penciling process, that
Yes.
involves no commitment on your part, does it? With the relevant studios, it is simply penciling.
No, I would disagree. I think to pencil stage space without any true intention of taking it is disingenuous, and my relationship with this industry is important to me. I'm a professional, so I would never just pencil stage
no.
space, and nor would anyone else.
I didn't suggest that you
Okay.
would own it, but I said there's no binding commitment at that point of time. Indeed, you don't enter and cannot enter into a binding commitment until the financiers
Correct.
have
Yes,
effectively greenlit the project and you can book the space.
absolutely.
Which
Hence
is
the problem.
why there is merit still in being the 6th pencil production.
No, I disagree, because it will come down to which production is able to pencil that space. If you're second pencil, you've got a fighting chance. If you're 6th pencil, you're not getting that space.
But you said in any event that as far as the production that you're looking to book, there was actually stage space available.
Okay. Of the 8 studios I've looked at, 2 said they could give me a pencil, but they're in high demand, including Eastbrook.
Yeah. Right.
So yes,
You have looked at Eastbrook.
I have.
Good.
Just to jump in. So one was, you've got a 6 pencil on one, the other one's available.
No, so Eastbrook have said that as of right now, they're in high demand. So I'm not putting a pencil down on anyone because I can't mislead that I'm a real booking yet, because this project may go to Australia.
Right, okay.
And in relation to where it's shot, you have yet, as it were, to feed back your research to the producer, who will then in turn feed back to the financiers, and the decision will then be made as to where it's shot.
Yes.
Yes. One thing they may say as well, we'll shoot a little bit later in the year, or we'll shoot next year.
No, they have a very impressive director who has given availability specifically for May to September.
Yeah, but again, as far as other factors which affect the date, that will include the above line talent and whether they're available.
Absolutely. I mean,
Yes.
yes, but my objective as a line producer is to make the project happen and to bring it to Buckinghamshire and to bring it to the UK.
Yes, well, you can't tell the above line talent you will be available if they're already committed to another production, can you?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
I think you do.
I don't, sorry.
If the above line talent, which
Yes.
includes the cast,
Yes.
the key cast that you mentioned in chief, is not available for a particular date because they are committed to another production,
Right.
and the production is dependent on the availability
Yeah.
of that talent, then it will have to wait.
No, I would disagree with that. I think if you had a director and a script that you wanted to make for a certain market to deliver for a certain time frame, you may move on to a different actor of the same caliber. You absolutely go through artist availability, and if they're not available at the time you want to shoot, you may move on. You may wait, but in this instance, I think that's unlikely.
So there is at least a prospect of waiting.
It's more likely that the project would collapse, and I have to just talk about that, because to align the above the line talent and the money, it's lightning in a bottle. You're really trying to kind of combine everything together. There's the more likely that that project will just not happen, or it'll go elsewhere.
Yeah, so there are a whole host of reasons why a penciling in a studio booking will not materialise in reality, aren't there?
A whole host, hopefully, yes, but
Yes.
you wouldn't want to encourage that when you're trying to maintain the economy.
Good. Now, in terms of grade B space,
Yes.
You've presumably used grade B space.
I
Have you produced at Longcross?
I have.
Yeah. Have you produced at Bray?
I haven't.
Right. Both occupied by major US producers as homes for their production,
Yes.
which include temporary stage space, don't they?
Yes.
You're not suggesting, are you, that those environments are unsafe, unsatisfactory, or unhealthy for the crew who work at them, are you?
I don't think it's fair to put words into my mouth like that. I'm not talking about grade B studios. I'm talking about hiring a workshop and trying to create a stage space out of a workshop. I'm not talking about grade A or B stock here in this
Right.
when I talk.
So you accept that grade B
Absolutely.
space is
Fit for
not just
purpose.
is fit for purpose. Good.
Absolutely,
That's
yeah.
very helpful. Then in terms of paragraph 2.3 of your proof, which is the number of personnel, the 150 to 300 personnel, your footnote reference, footnote 5, refers to redacted call sheet and redacted progress report,
yes.
which you also touched on in your evidence in chief.
Yes.
It doesn't appear in the inquiry document.
My call sheet.
Yeah.
And oh, does it not? I'm so sorry. I
Do
did
you have
include it.
copies of them?
I have printouts of them. We can get copied.
2.3 was the reference to 150 to 300, but there's a footnote 5 reference, madam. Just trying to find which page that's on. Page 13. Appendix 1 and Appendix 2. I don't know whether you have those, but
No, I
certainly
don't.
not in the
Completely
inquiry
missed those as well. So
Sorry,
Yeah.
normally
my
I would
copy's
have
not very
picked that
good.
up, so
Sorry. Don't know whether we
So
have the
perhaps they
mechanics
could
to
be
make a
copied at a suitable.
course.
we can
Right,
definitely get copies. I'm sure Miss
Yeah.
the
Okay,
council
just-
can arrange that. Yeah.
So I can see, but just in terms of
Apologies.
what you said, 2.3, the 150 to 300 personnel per HE TV stroke film production.
Yes.
Just, I mean, in terms of the source of those figures, is that your common experience? Are those minimums and maximums, or do they exceed
No,
those
no,
numbers?
honestly, no two film is the same, and I know that's very contrary to the kind of statisticians and economy evidence that's been given so far, because that's not what I do. I don't write reports for a living, so apologies. I just wanted to give an idea. Every shoot day and every film is different. I'd say that 150 is probably the minimum. Yes.
That's helpful. And as I understand it, the call sheet, which we'll see a
Yes.
copy of in due course, is issued the night before the filming day.
That's right. Yes.
Yes. How soon before the filming day?
Uh-huh.
Presumably after the.
We try to get them out before wrap of that day.
Right.
That used to be the standard before email, because they had to be manually typed up, but now they tend to be issued on wrap.
So just for my understanding, you don't know if you're in the studio.
Oh,
until
no,
the day
so
before.
sorry. You'll have a schedule that will say the entire plan for the shoot.
Okay.
It will tell you we're shooting for 2 weeks at Marlow, then we're going to St Paul's Cathedral for 3 days, and then we're going to Malta. That's what that schedule will explain. The call sheet is the granular of the day, of every single day. So it takes all the information that's in the schedule and it gives all the details. So every single person involved in that filming day knows the plan for that day.
Yes,
Understood.
but say for if you're a supporting actor,
Yes.
you'll be told the day before, specifically the day, but you'll know.
No,
you
but
may
I
be
mean,
required
that
during the
would be
week. How does it
very
work?
risky to book an actor, the next supporting actor the day before. Very risky. No, that the schedule will be issued to the casting collective or whoever you're using in advance, so that people can plan.
Yeah.
Particularly because of continuity, you don't want to lose someone that you're
So
relying
that's
on.
what I wanted to establish with them. So they'll know that the week that they're going to be required.
Yes.
And they'll know the day before that they will definitely be required on a given day.
No, they'll know a week before that they're going to be required on Wednesday, the 10th of whatever, but the night before they will know what time they're going to be in makeup and costume.
Good, that's helpful. Now, in terms of paragraph 2.4 of your proof,
Yeah.
You stress the need for parking, don't you, in 2.4?
Probably, yes.
And in 3.21, which is on page 11, you stress the need for plentiful parking,
Yes.
don't you, as being a vital element. Why is there a need for plentiful parking?
Talking about crew parking here. So the parking on the studio lot is the crew car park, where your average crew member drives to work, parks, and doesn't have any equipment. You'll have trucks that provide equipment, and those are parked on the unit base, which Mr. Pryor talked you through. The need for ample parking for the crew is so that you can ensure that you can have the rotation of multiple projects. However, the most successful studio, in my opinion, is one that has transport links as well as ample parking. So I would say that a good studio needs to provide parking for some capacity, but not full capacity, because getting on the train is quite a novelty for crew to be able to commute in the traditional sense. Anyone who's able to do so, and that's a lot of crew, do so.
And it's fair to say, subject to the call sheet, that crew may be working in a different place on different days of the same week.
Oh yes, I mean, it can completely depend on the schedule. Absolutely. Yeah. As I explained, you try, sorry, I don't want to get too granular, but you try to avoid unit moves. So you try to complete all of your work in one place to make sure that you have the economy of scale and efficiency.
And in terms of the percentage of freelance crew who live within 45 minutes of Marlow Film Studio, 63% do not, do they?
Where are we getting?
Paragraph 6.6, page 30.
6.6. Okay. So states that the freelance.
You're quoting.
Okay, yeah, no,
evidence.
I'm just reading it. Thank
Yeah.
you. Sorry. Yes, that's correct. I think that the cluster of crew is undeniable. The smaller clusters around London and around the country exist, but the greater cluster of crew and suppliers is where the most people will attract the work, because people want to commute the least amount of time.
Good. I think that's all I had for you. So
Thank you, Mr. Bird.
Sure. Thank you very much, madam.
Thank you very much. Right, we'll take a short adjournment so that we can swap up.
Well, ma'am, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Actually, Mr. Bird has covered all my questions.
Oh.
Just to say, I don't think there's a point in doing the swap. Just one point. Obviously, the backlot management plan was something that we discussed in terms of Miss Waite's evidence in Councillor Crabtree's rebuttal. Just to put on record, of course, we've been dealing with that in the residential parts in the round table, and there were questions I would have had for Miss Waite, but we're dealing with that with conditions and that sort of a work in progress on the backlot management plan. So I don't think it would help you for us to put those points as they're sort of in progress. That's the only sort of clarification on that aspect I wanted to put.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
If there's anything I can contribute to that process, then let me know.
I think that would, yeah, yes, potentially with the Rule 6 and the council. Yeah, the conditions are coming before me in varying forms at varying points in time. Okay. Any interested parties objecting want to ask questions? No. I don't have any questions for you. It really helped your evidence actually explain how it all works, and then going to the studios on Monday also sort of let me see it all as well. So
okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. White, any re-examination questions?
Mum, I'm going to learn from Mr. Bird and also give you a birthday present, the only one I can give, which is why I've got no re-examination. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. We've got nearly finished.
Oh.
Yes, you can now cast away your professional life and enjoy your birthday. Don't project yourself, Mr. Bird, onto the inspector.
My sister did do a Moonpig delivery with a small bottle of Prosecco here this morning, so bless her, which was very kind. Yes. So anyway, right. We will meet on site at 8 a.m. tomorrow with Mr. Dix, Mr. Tester. Should we resume at 10 or should we say 10:30? I'm just thinking getting.
Well, frankly, I think the menu tomorrow is Miss Evans.
Yeah.
And I don't think we're under time pressure, frankly, based on the time estimates. Mr. Fraser's going to have the pleasure of calling Miss Evans in chief. I'm letting him off the leash. Probably not the right imagery, actually. Yeah. So I think, why don't we go 10:30 so you're not under any pressure to, you're comfortable, frankly.
Yep. 10:30. Is that good with you, Mr. Bird, Miss Nevin? Yep. Okay. Right. We will resume at 10:30 tomorrow then. Thank you very much.